typical me. I went to the wrong source. I went to the one that's just me and not the one that has you in it. Anyway, yeah, it is. It really is. It really is. Anyway, hello everyone. It's another Fantasy Ground Fridays, and joining us today, we have Stephen Chenault of Troll Lord Games.
How's it going?
I
forgot to get my microphone out. There we go.
Oh, that's better.
Much better.
That's better. That's okay. I'm terrible at this too, and I do this professionally.
It's just too many parts. It's too many moving parts.
Yeah, just like I gotta fix your webcam here, but we can just start. So first off, you wanna just tell us. Let's just start with just tell us a little bit about yourself and Troll Lord Games for those that don't know. Although I suspect, judging by how chat's been, pretty much everyone here knows you.
We'll give the quick and dirty, and if anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer anything. My name is Stephen Chenault. I'm the CEO of Troll Lord Games. We've been in business since 1999. Myself and a man named Matt Golden. We started the company, and within weeks, my brother Davis Chenault joined us, and there was the three of us. We created Troll Lord Games, created our own little rule set, started publishing adventures that were very compatible to D20 that was coming out in the year 2000, and we debuted all that at the Gen Con at Gen Con 2000, and from that point we began publishing D20 Dungeons and Dragons material. After that, we signed with Gary Gygax. We worked with Gary up until he passed away. And then we launched our own RPG, Castles Crusades, in 2004, and that's been a flagship for us now for 16 years, I guess, however long that's been since 2004. We jumped onto Fantasy Grounds quite a while ago. I think we got on pretty early, but TLG, I didn't have the technical expertise to get in there and support it like I should have. So it kind of went its own direction with a bunch of the fans of CNC, slowly kind of putting stuff together. So we've been doing RPGs for 21 years now, I guess. Published Gary, and our flagship is Castles and Crusades. Now we do support 5th edition now. We got a lot of 5th edition material. We got a Kickstarter coming out pretty soon for a whole set of adventures. And we got Amazing Adventures, Victoria, some other RPGs that we do, and we dabble in some fiction, et cetera, et cetera. That's the short and dirty story of Troll Lord Games.
I think that covers like a good portion of it for those that don't know.
Yeah, that's just quick.
Yeah. So we will be taking questions from chat, by the way. So if you guys want to start like popping some in, I'll start queuing those up and getting ready. But I think first my main thing is, I think one of the big things that we wanted to talk about today is recently Castles and Crusades moved over into the Fantasy Grounds Forge.
Yes.
Which, for those that don't know, the Fantasy Grounds Forge is our kind of self-publishing community marketplace and platform. So I was just kind of wondering what was some of the...
Someone asked about the Dr. Pepper.
I saw that.
It's right here.
I saw that.
Oh, that's Aldo Giazzi. That's a good friend of mine right there. Aldo has been instrumental in TLG's history for many, 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 many years. He actually, it's an unknown fact, but that man there actually saved TLG from going under in, 2004 or 2003 or something like that. Yeah, he stepped up and gave us some assistance. So hats off to Aldo. So yeah, we moved to the Forge, a month ago, maybe 2 months ago now, I think, something like that. So when like I mentioned earlier, we really, and this is largely because I lack the technical expertise to get into the whole Fantasy Ground stuff. Though we have Troll Lord Games has its own print shop. Of course, we publish and print, hundreds of titles, and these go through both our print shop and other print shops, and working with people like Aldo Giazzi. We get them into stores and distributors and consolidators all over the place, from Japan to United Kingdom, wherever. And so that's a huge amount of work. And I never really kind of shifted in the direction when VTT started becoming a thing. I didn't pay much attention to it. You know, I guess we signed a contract with Smiteworks, or I don't even think it was Smiteworks. And I can't remember who it was. It may have been, I can't remember now. But so it just kind of sat there on its own, and the fans were getting in there and uploading content as they did. We gave them permission, and I honestly don't remember. I probably talked to a few at some point, but I don't really remember it. When Chuck came on board Chuck Cumbo came on board about 3 years ago, the two things that he wanted to focus on was that, being a big fan of CNC, he wanted to bring us kind of into the modern era, both here on Twitch and with the VTT platforms, most notably Fantasy Grounds. So he began working with that quite a bit, working with the guys doing all that stuff. And he quickly discovered that creating, there's a whole lot that goes into creating a book. And it seems when you get that 24 pages, adventure, you think, well, this is cool, but there's a huge amount of stuff that goes into it, that all that kind of has to come together, in that final moment. So as he was kind of figuring that out, and I wasn't really giving him much assistance because I had far much other stuff to do, that, we hired Chuck to handle that side of things, and he did so. And they worked for, I guess, about 18 months or so, but my schedule began to clear up, and then I dove into it with he and Tim Burns, who does our communications. He's our communications director. And then we all started kind of tackling this thing to see which direction we want to go. And God bless Chuck and his infinite amounts of patience, because he probably explained to me the way this platform works about 10 times before it finally sank into my head, what's going on. But when we came up to how we want to present the products, one of the things that we, through many, many years of just trial and error, I think I built the TLG's first store using Trellix, which was a web program. And it was very, very basic. And we slowly evolved over the years. But by the time we landed where we are now, we have a lot of control over the way it's presented, the way it's organized, the way it's priced, and all of that mess. And it's kind of cemented in my mind that Trollord Games needs to maintain some level of control over the way this product is presented. And it has nothing to do with other vendors who might be selling it, whether it's Fantasy Grounds or Drive-Thru RPG or Impressions and Flat River Group, who Aldo works for. It's more to do with, we know the product, we know which products go with which products, and we know how to present it, because this is our stuff. And the guys over at Fantasy Grounds or Aldo have hundreds and hundreds of other titles to deal with, and publishers, and just.
I know. I know.
You're in the thick of it. So when it came to the Forge, the three of us, Tim, Chuck, and I, talked about it, and we thought, this is going to be the route to go. I know it's new. It's kind of still in the beta testing or something with you guys. It's relatively new.
Yeah.
The marketplace is, but it gave us a better, just a handle to get in there, take it off y'all's shoulders. You don't have to worry about it. I think we've had 2 issues with the Forge, and you guys fixed them in minutes. In hours. It was fixed really fast. So it's set up nice. It's working very nice. And now we can upload product in the order that we want to release it without bothering you guys. And then we just cross promote and go from there, and hopefully everybody's happy. So that was really what drove us to the Forge, and it's been working very well. We're very, very happy with it.
That's awesome. I think having Castles and Crusades on the Forge, it's huge, since it's an actual, it's an actual published game. It's not just someone's mod. And not that there's anything wrong with those mods. I don't want you to take it, but it's nice to see that it is a route for, especially a more indie title where you could go and self-publish onto there entirely almost.
I think that if I was just stepping into the business, it would definitely be the route I would go. And because I think there may be 1 or 2 other publishers on there. I'm really not sure, but I think there are. But if Castles and Crusades and Trollord Games can give it a little bit more traffic, a little bit more weight, then that's all the better. And we've got, in print, about 150 titles for CNC, and we plan to just release them every couple of weeks, as we get them kind of put together for Fantasy Grounds and get them up on the Forge. So it'll continue to grow over time. So hopefully that helps the whole that community, that marketplace over there.
Yeah. All right. Well, we did get a message or a question from chat. It's going to kind of be a sharp left turn from what we were just talking about. But what year did you start playing RPGs?
So I finally got the story out of my brother. So this starts back in the mid 70s. So it's going to be now when I started playing, the age are still kind of confused with both Davis and I. Davis is 2 years older than myself, and he's one of the ones that started Castles and Crusades. Or he's Troller Games with me, and he's still our primary writer at the moment. So way back in the dawn of time, I remember I was very young, and my dad was in the military, and one of his soldiers was deploying to South Korea, which is a hardship tour, which means you can't carry anything. You're taking your ruck, and that's it. And he called my mom or dad or whoever, and I went with my mother to pick up these 5 or 6 little bitty brown books that had Dungeons and Dragons on it. And those, of course, were the original published D&D books. And she gave them to Davis as a Christmas gift, or I can't remember what it was. I think it's his birthday, but his birthday's close to Christmas, so I get them always mixed up. So, and I asked him the other day, I said, when did we actually start playing? I keep telling people it's 1976 or 1977. He said, well, I got the books before we played. He got those books. And in those days, there's no internet, of course, and there's no network of people playing D&D. They only did 1,000 of those box sets, so those brown books to begin with. So it was just really, picking up and getting some steam. So there's no one to turn to learn how to play it. So Davis, he read through it, couldn't figure out what this game was. We were playing war games at the time, so it had no chits, it had no hexes, maps, it had nothing with it. So it sat in a closet for, he said, about 6 months. So my guess is that would have been, he would have gotten those books in 75, and we started gaming in 76. It might have been that he got them in 76 and we started gaming in 77, but my guess is it's 75, 76. And I barely remember that. He made the characters. I didn't know what was going on. He made me 9 characters, and he said, name these guys, or 5 characters, whatever it was. There's a whole bunch of them. And at the time, I was reading Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan novels. So my first character in Dungeons & Dragons was named Tarzan. The second character's name was Tarzan's son, which is Korak, I think. And it went down from there. It's just figures from the Tarzan stuff. And then we started playing, and we started playing really regularly. And shortly thereafter, I think the Monster Manual comes out, and he scooped that up at Sears. I have this weird memory. I think it's, someone in the chat can correct me. When did the M in the Monster Manual come out? 77, 78? I think it's 78. But I remember being at Sears when we bought the Monster book. I was standing next to him. It was like $9 or some craziness like that.
And then still that price.
Yeah, it's not anymore. It's funny too. I need to pull these out because I've got them. The original Dungeon Master's Guide that he bought, the Monster Manual, and the Player's Handbook. So these would have been published in 78 and 80, whatever years those were. We still have them. The covers they're beat to death because we use them constantly. The spine part is actually fallen off, but the spine is still intact. And the covers are still on. Those things were so well made. It's absolutely crazy. So 1977, Bella is telling us 1977 with Monster. So we probably did start in 76. Yeah.
Wow. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Lot of different games came out in between that and now.
Yeah, it's funny too because if you look at Davis, he would buy any game that came out, starting in the 70s. Anything. I mean, and so his shelf was like Rollmaster. There was something Dragon Quest, I think. There's all these role-playing games that he had. Elf, what is that? The little elf thing, whatever. I don't know. A Dwarven Glory, stuff like that. Anyways, he had, and we still have it piled around here somewhere, but I didn't buy any of it. I played Dungeons & Dragons and then Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and I played AD&D until we released Castles and Crusades in 2005 and 2006. I played AD&D up until that point, so I didn't even switch to second edition or third edition. Wow. I played those 2 games and Gamma World was about it. So.
See, I haven't had a chance to play original or AD&D first edition, but I did start playing with AD&D second edition.
Yeah. Second edition didn't change too much, but it's I don't know. They're all cool games. I think the only one that didn't appeal to me too much was fourth edition because it tried to do a video game approach to
Yeah.
it, which I don't think it really worked. But some people loved it, and it's
there's a lot of people here at Smiteworks that love it. Sorry to call you out. I hope you don't get fourth edition hate for that. I've never played fourth edition, but I want to try it just because it seems like it looks like a skirmish game.
Yeah.
Like
well,
if
and it's
like,
part of the whole story, right? I mean, it's the whole thing.
All right, so we did get another question. Now we're gonna just hard left turn right back to what we were talking about. Right. It was about the updated, the new rules set that was put onto the Forge. So the current one. They were asking like, what's the difference between what used to be there and what is there now?
Okay, so now that's a technical question that I'm going to quickly get lost in. Okay. I know that the big drive was because you guys at Fantasy Grounds were doing the Unity set. I believe you were upgrading to the Unity set, and ours was not compatible with that. And I know there's going to be a lot of broken parts in it. And because a variety of people worked on these products, I think you had a lot of signatures that, just ways of doing things that needed to be squared up and, brought into order with one after the other. And that's what Chuck was doing. I think Tim Smith is who we eventually settled on to fix the rule set for us. But why, what does it say? Why is the quick start in the setup rules auto load buttons with the players, monsters, and books? That I don't know. Specifically, we'd have to get Chuck, and I think he's watching. So Chuck, if you could answer that question, that would be great.
Yeah, he's here. I've seen him answering a couple of easy ones.
Okay, good deal. He said that's a guide for the using of the legacy products. So if you still have the old products, that sets it up so that you can still use your old products and you're good to go. It's one of the things that I think gets easily lost in today's marketplace. But Troll Games and Castles and Crusades, we've done 8 printings of the Player's Handbook, and we've never done a new edition. And D&D's on its 5th edition.
About that in a minute.
Yeah, but we've never done that, and that was one of the big debates on Fantasy Grounds. Where does that kind of land with what we're doing? Because we're really, it's not a different rule set; it's just a different way of doing it, I suppose.
Yeah. So I was actually going to ask about because that's a very unique thing in this industry is not doing a new edition, just doing smaller tweaks and redesigning the books.
Right,
so what was kind of the mindset of that?
So that came from an article I read in the Dragon magazine. I could not tell you which issue.
I'd be really impressed if you could.
Yeah, a long time ago. So this is going to be like 2002, 2003, something like that. We were working with Gary. And I'm not a huge collector on things, but one of the things I collect is the Dragon magazines. I absolutely love the first 126 issues. They're just really good magazines. The rest are good too, but those are kind of where my thing is. And I remember reading in one of them, I don't know where, it was going to be early 80s probably, and Gary wrote an editorial in which he was talking about the coming changes to Dungeons and Dragons. And what he was specifically talking about was the chances of there being a second edition. And just for those who don't know, I do not have a business degree or any marketing. When I went into this, I was working on my PhD in history. So it was a lot of stuff I had to learn to, to unravel how to run a business and all that. There's been some pitfalls along the way. Aldo helped me quite a bit, actually. But so when I read this article, one of the things he said, it was very pointed that there will never be a second edition of Dungeons & Dragons. And he explained why, because when you do that, you split your customer base, and now you either have to create stuff for 2 customer bases or abandon one entirely. And of course, when he was, forced out of the company or whatever happened there, they did a second edition and the whole thing. RPGs are kind of, I don't think as a gaming product it's unique in the way it should be marketed, but it has in the last 30 years been marketed, I think, kind of erroneously with the constant additions over and over again. I just think that's a bad idea. And I think Gary had it spot on. So when we did fast forward a couple of years later, when we started putting Castles and Crusades together, I told Davis, my brother, and Matt Golden designed it. I just did some writing for it, but they designed how the game works. I said, we're not doing additions. So long as I'm in charge of the company, I'm going to follow Gary's advice, and we're going to just do there's one Castles and Crusades, and the idea is we constantly get new fans on board. As older fans get bored with it and move on, or they don't have to buy the books because there's no reason to because you already have it, then we just want to constantly get new people in, and that's the way to keep the whole thing alive. So that was the underlying philosophy behind it, and it's kind of we try to be loyal to the people out there playing the game. You know, you spend a lot of money, time, and effort into it. You shouldn't have to get a new one every 2 years, unless you want to, and it's great. But
well, and which is the people that really like to buy new books every couple of years, they absolutely can buy the new printings.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do improve it. I mean, the editing improves. If you look at the first printing, now I like the first printing, but it got slammed by a lot of people who loved the game because it's coming from my historical background. I don't read books with pictures, you know, maybe some map diagrams, whatever. So our text blocks are crazy dense, and it's just this wall of text coming at you, which doesn't really work in a rule book, right? Yeah. I mean, it gets exhausting.
There's a balance. There's a balance you have to make. Because I have definitely opened some, I won't name them, but I have opened some RPG rule books where I'm like, this is hard to read.
Yeah.
Because it is mostly, it's either too much text and it's just like looking at the dictionary, or it's the opposite and the text and the actual like rules are all broken up with like lots of huge pictures that it's nice art, it's very evocative, but it doesn't do much for learning how to play a game.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Because the other way, you can go the other way easily too, where you can't find the rules that you need, and this term is, I don't know what this means, you know, whatever it is. But it's been a learning, and so each printing of the book improved somewhat, and we did. I think I can't remember now. I think between the third and the fourth printing, we made the only real changes we made to the game, and it wasn't to the game itself. I changed the barbarians' abilities, and I changed the name of the monks' abilities, because they had been previously called like the key strike and whatever, and it was a very kind of Eastern orientation to fighting, and I really wanted the monk to be just a pugilist, you know, just if you're
a little more. Well, and it makes them just a little more universal. You don't have to be universal. You don't have to be like the star of a kung fu movie if you're playing a monk. Right. You can if you want. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. But you could also just be a bar fighter.
Yes, and that's the perfect word for it. Universal is, you got it head on. So that was changed, and then we added we added a chunk of spells, like maybe 45 spells, something like that.
Wow.
So that was really the only significant changes. Yeah. The only other significant changes, and this wasn't to the game itself, was between the 7th printing and the current printing, the 8th printing. We really watched, everybody watched in the past 3 years, I guess, maybe 4. The market has changed a lot. There's a lot of women playing the games, which is fantastic. I mean, it's just grown in every direction. So when we worked on the 8th printing, I wanted to make sure that there was a wide variety of art to appeal to a wide variety of people. So we went through, and like on each of the races, we now have a male and female presented, and in the classes, a male and female. We just try to make sure that's throughout the whole book, so anyone picking it up can kind of dive in and be comfortable. So that was, and then I took the controls off of Peter Bradley, our artist, and he did this wonderful layout job, bringing some color into it. It was just the 8th printing is, I am so happy with that book. It's just ecstatic with that book.
Well, I now need to pick it up. I haven't read one of the, I know I picked up a PDF a while ago or something on like Drive-Thru-RPG, but I need to pick up I need to pick up a physical copy of the new book, because I love having the actual book, especially for learning.
Yes, it's I'm a bibliophile. Is that what they call that?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, we do. Are there any plans to bring?
Let me respond real quick to Jim Minoka here. I guess that's Jim and Minoka, whatever. Yeah, I really do think. I know Gary's gotten a little bit of hate in the last 6 months. I don't particularly think it's deserved, but that's a conversation for another day. But he was actually a very intelligent businessman. I worked with him for 8 years. We worked very closely together, and he was extraordinarily intelligent and savvy when it came to the marketplace. And not only a good game designer, but that dude was the consummate gamer. All he wanted to do was game, and he didn't care what kind of game it was. When we would go visit Gary for conventions or whatever, man, we'd eat, we'd drink, and he'd pull a board game out or something, and it'd be on the table, and we'd be playing something. So, yeah, it was a good mentor to work with, without a doubt.
All right. Grape Ape TX on Twitch asks, are there any plans to bring some of the other settings like Amazing Adventures and Victorious to Fantasy Grounds?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two sides to that coin. We've got a decent release schedule set up. I think it's through July at the moment. And now Chuck and Tim and I are kind of laying out what we're going to do next after that. I think it's going to be the A series. And while we're releasing these, we'll sit down with Tim Smith, and figure out what needs to go into getting. And Chuck will have to correct me, but I think the approach that we want to do is the Siege engine is the mechanic that drives Castles and Crusades and Amazing Adventures and Victorious and Tainted Lands and Star Siege and all the other RPGs that we do. So the idea, I think, is to make a Siege engine rule set that people can use, and then they can play Amazing Adventures with that, or Victorious, or Tainted Lands, and then we can put the particular settings out, so that they can grab just the Siege engine. Then we don't have to redo it each time. I believe that's the approach that we are heading down, I think.
That's fine. I'm excited to. I'm gonna be excited to check some of those out too. Like I knew about Castles and Crusades, and I've read the rules. I didn't know about the other games that you guys produce. So I'm really excited to start checking those out.
Yeah, this year actually we're doing a huge planescape type approach. We're doing the one thing Castles doesn't have right now is the planes. We haven't really developed the outer planes, and that's what I'm working on now. But kind of tied into that is going to be real world stuff, which is Amazing Adventures, and then Tainted Lands, which is horror. So yeah, we're going to kind of tie it all into one big bundle over the next 18 months. We're hoping that unfolds.
This sounds a lot of fun. I love Planescape. It's a great concept of a setting.
It is. The challenging thing about the planes that I have found from a game master's perspective is it, once they start going plane travel, it's easy to go from one plane to the next, right? So it's hard for the game master to prepare for that.
Yes.
Because there's so much. There's just so much. So what we're trying to do in this book is create kind of a template that allows for the game master to jump into it really quickly, got the tools to get started, and then go from there. That's the objective.
Fantasy Grounds Academy wants to know, are you going to make any? Are you going to be at any of the physical cons this season?
This season, I'll be at Gary Con, and that'll be the only physical con that Trollord Games is at. I might go to Gen Con and meander around for a couple of days. That's kind of in my my wheelhouse at the moment, my thought process. But next year, we will probably get back into it. It looks like everything is settled down from the late unpleasantness, and we can get back into kind of a regular schedule.
And GaryCon is soon, isn't it? Is it this month?
Yeah, it's the end of March 24th through 8th, something like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. And it's a great show. GaryCon's fun. It's a fun show.
Yeah, that's one of those that I've always wanted to go to, but I just never have made it out there.
It's worth going to. It's, of course, Trollord Games has deep roots in GaryCon for obvious reasons, but it's just a pretty relaxed convention. Gen Con's, I love Gen Con, I really do. Gen Con has got, Gen Con and Origins and Dragon Con have this. Dragon Con is my favorite of all the conventions. If you were to ask me which I would want to go to, is Dragon Con, because it has everything. It's not just games. It's Star Wars. I absolutely love it. Lots to do at Dragon Con, but so Gen Con has this atmosphere about it. It's just kind of, you just soak it in, right? You can just sit there and consume it. But Gary Con is still kind of got that really good energy with it, but it's much more personal, which is nice.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard, is that it's a very laid back and personal convention.
Yeah,
unlike you go to one of the big ones like San Diego Comic Con, and it's like there's nothing personal about it.
No, it's not. Yeah. Yeah, well, and even Gen Con, when we first went to Gen Con in 2000, it was smaller
Mm-hmm.
and you could kind of negotiate, but now it's just mountains of people move, and which has
Yeah.
got its own mystique to it.
Yeah.
I think we stopped going in 2017, but I think it was 2016, 2015 that Tim and I, communications director Tim, we just decided to go to, once the booth was closed, eat dinner, and then just sit and watch. And it
Oh,
was
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Cosplayers and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was just really cool. Just so it had its whole different energy to it.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite like pastimes. If you're not doing anything at a con, is just sit and watch the people.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool because people get, and it's wonderful that they get into these characters and they put so much blood, sweat, and tears into these costumes, and it's awesome. I mean, this is cool.
All right, this one wasn't technically a question from chat, but I'm going to turn it into one.
All right.
So they say they've always been interested in Castles Crusades, but never made the leap. And with it being on Fantasy Grounds, they might have to check it out now. I'm going to turn that into a question by asking, for someone that has never played Castles and Crusades, or maybe never even heard of it, what is your like pitch for it? Why play Castles and Crusades?
So there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but at the end of the day, the best pitch I can say is once you take up Castles and Crusades, the game becomes yours. The Siege engine is very simple, and the Siege engine is that mechanic that resolves everything except combat. So if you're trying to convince a tavern keeper to do something, or if you're trying to find a trap door, whatever, the Siege engine is there. So there's your mechanics. Now you're done. And it's very, very simple. I can explain how the Siege engine works in about 2 minutes. It is so simple. So once that's done, once you've kind of solidified the mechanics at the game, and this is the real appeal for Castles and Crusades, and this is what we find out all the time, when people switch over to CNC, they start loving it after about 5 or 6 games. It takes about 5 or 6 games to kind of realize what you can do. It took me that long. It was probably about the 3rd or 4th game of CNC that I was running before I was like, oh, holy crap, this game does what Mac and Davis designed it to do. And what that is not only does it give the power of the story back to this CK, that's our castle keeper. They now can, because everything is so easily resolved, you don't have to worry about all of this mechanical discussions about this, that, or the other. But more importantly, or equally as importantly, the players will start to learn after a little bit, but there is no limit. You don't look at your character sheet. You have some skills on there, that your race gives you or your class gives you, but really you can try anything, and you're going to roll that Siege engine. And it takes people a few games to kind of realize this. Oh, wait a minute. I don't need to ask, can I do this? You just say, I'm going to try to do this. And the CK is going to say, because you've got the mechanic to resolve it. You don't need to look anything up. You need to do anything. Essentially, all the CK is going to do is put a challenge level on your roll. And if you hit it, equal it, or over it, you're gone. So if you're into story-based RPGs, it is the way to go, without a doubt. If you're into developing your characters and role-playing in that respect, it's the way to go. If you like crunchy bits, it's also the way to go, because the Castle Keeper's Guide, the Siege engine is simple in and of itself, but the CKG has tons of extra rules that you can attach to it. If you want to, bring all of this in, bring it all in. If you want to take elements from 5th edition, you can take elements from 5th edition. It's very easy because nothing changes the core of the Siege engine that is your resolution dice. So the pitch for CNC is it's easy to learn. Hardest thing you're going to have to figure out is your name, your character's name. It's easy to learn, fast combat, and it really allows you to grow the game in the direction that you want to go, which is, I think, for generally speaking, for role players, is a huge strength, even if they don't realize it. Even if you've been playing a game that's got more stringent rules, you don't realize it. But if you're playing a role-playing game, there's a good chance you've got a huge imagination before you even sat down. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and Castles and Crusades lets you go with that.
Yeah. Well, funny comment just to add to that. Shield Walrus on Twitch says takes him hours to come up with names.
Exactly. Names are exhausting, and I even have a book of names. They are, because you can't make them goofy, right? I mean, if you make them goofy, then it's goofy to start.
Then your character is going to be the joke character for the entire campaign. no matter how
Exactly.
serious you try to make them.
Yep, you're done. You're just because that's the first thing, right? Yeah, names are very hard. They're extremely hard. And then you get them. I had this one player, I love him to death, but he would string consonants and vowels together in some incomprehensible order, so we could never pronounce his name. It was I don't know, it was Jacques Tabluki or whatever. It's just noise.
Like every dragon name in fantasy ever.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. It's probably my only pet peeve. I read a lot of fantasy. My only real pet peeve is names. If I start running into names that are clearly just visible, whatever, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah. So hold on, because I think we had a question, but I'm gonna hop away from that one because I do have one more. Once again, for some of those people who don't know, since we just talked a lot about the Siege engine, can you give like just a rundown of what that is, how that works, and why it's different than say 5th edition?
Okay, so now so it's going to sound very familiar to 5th edition, and I'm not going to throw any stones in any which direction. You can't copyright mechanics, and there's so many of these mechanics are so similar to begin with. So those people out there who play 5e, you're going to sound, there's going to be some familiarities to it. But let me say real quick, and Chuck, you're going to have to correct me if you're still out there if I'm wrong, but I think that the rules set for Castles and Crusades on Fantasy Grounds is going to be free through March 31st. So you can just download it and it's yours on the Forge over there. Secondly, if you're into the PDF side of things, the 7th printing of the Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook, which is where the core rule set is free on our site. You can download that as well. And, we just go and check it out. Okay, so the Siege engine works like this. You have your 6 attributes, just like you do in any of these RPGs. And you have primary attributes and secondary attributes. Your base chance to succeed at anything you do is going to be 12 for primary attributes and 18 for secondary attributes. Anytime you roll an attribute check to resolve whatever it is you're trying to resolve, you're going to roll a d20, you're going to add your level to it, and you're going to add your attribute bonus to it, and then you're going to tell the CK what you came up with. On their end of the screen, the CK is going to have, they're going to know if it's your primary or if it's your secondary. So they know it's going to have a base to succeed of 12 or a base to succeed of 18. And then they're going to add whatever challenge level they want to it. Now, if you're doing something against a monster or another character or an NPC, their level and or hit dice is the challenge level. If you're doing something like trying to kick a door down, then the CK is just going to randomly choose a challenge level, 2, 4, 6, 10, 1,000,000. It doesn't matter. And if you equal or exceed the base plus challenge level, you got it. That's it. That's the Siege engine. That's the mechanic of the game right there. We don't have skills and feats. You have character, class, and race skills, but we don't have skill packages and all of that stuff. If you want to develop your character in that direction, it becomes kind of a role-playing thing. Or you get into the CKG where there's a plentiful of rules to expand your characters in those directions. But that's a Siege engine in a nutshell. It is very simple. It sounds a little more complicated than it is. And once you play it just a little bit, 2, 3, 4 games, you'll be a veteran at it and you won't even think about it.
All right. Now that sounds actually pretty easy.
Yeah, it's very easy.
I think I've got my head around it, and I'm really excited to actually play with it now and try it.
Yeah, it's worth it minimally taking a look at. And one of the funny things about CNC, ever since 1970, whatever, when Davis and I started wargaming together, I hate reading rules. I can't stand it. So 40-something years of hating rules. So when Davis and Mac were writing the rules for Castles and Crusades, we set this up before we began production of the game and designing the game. When they wrote a rule, when they were satisfied this is the way they wanted to go, they would have to send it to me. And if I didn't understand it in my first pass, I kicked it back to them and said, I don't know what this means. So it's even written in simple language, mainly for me, but it helps everybody else too. So
it does, and it makes it easy to teach new players.
Yes, absolutely. And, and that's a funny thing. I ran a very good friend of mine the Gamma Trade Show years and years ago. There was a whole bunch of us. This is about 06, 07. There's a whole bunch of us sitting around a table talking about third edition sales and a lot of these games that were coming out that sales were not good. Items, some people's properties were tanking and whatnot. And I explained to them, and I said, this is my opinion, but because they were all young kids won't read. I guess it's the millennials. In those days, it was the millennials were younger. And they won't read anything. They're just on the video games or the phones. And that's just not true at all. That's not even vaguely true. What you have done is you've created 3 books, a DM's guide, a player's book, and a monster book, with probably 250,000 words in each of them, filled and packed with rules and nuance and all of this crap. And when I was 10, if you walked up to me and gave me 900 pages of rules and said, hey, read this, and we're going to play it, I would have been like, yeah, that's not happening. And I read a lot as a kid.
I mean, it's true. I would say the worst part about trying to get someone into a role-playing game is handing them that player's handbook or that core rule book and saying, to start, you got to read this. You don't have to memorize the whole book, but you got to at least read the parts that are important. And they open it up, and then they go, I don't know if I want to actually play this anymore.
It's funny you should say that, because I remember very specifically, Davis he had just bought the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. So it's 1980 or whatever year it is. And I remember he and my other brother and I were going to play a game of D&D. He was really excited. He just got the Player's Handbook. And I was sitting on the floor next to the bed. I remember this like it was yesterday. And Davis handed me that Player's Handbook, and he said, before we play, you have to read this. And I looked at that. I said, I'm not reading that. And I put it right back down on the bed. I'm not reading that. We played anyways because I wasn't going. That's crazy. And it's a
big ask. It's a big thing to ask.
It's huge ask when you're 12 or whatever I was at the time.
I mean, even as an adult, getting handed a 500-page book and being told, you have to read this before we can play this game of make-believe.
I still won't read instructions. It drives my wife crazy. We get a new appliance. I'm not reading it. I'll figure it out. It can't be that hard. So 3 weeks later, I'm still trying to figure it out. But yeah, I just don't like instructions. I can't stand them. So that's one of the I think the things about Castles and Crusades, Amazing Adventures, Victorious, is we went rules light. And anything that you want to add to that, that's really on you. We've given you the tools in the CKG and other books we've done. The Adventurer's Backpack. There's a whole bunch of them out there. But at its core, you can get the Player's Handbook and just go. Just start playing.
And that's actually, that led me right into the question I've been waiting kind of to ask. Because this is another just like, I would say, unique feature of Castles and Crusades, at least in like the Dungeons and Dragons similar games, is to have essentially your game master guide, your castle keeper guide being optional rules instead of being mandatory.
Right. That actually, Tim, communications director, and Tim, he's always, he grumbles humorously under his breath when I tell people that you just need the Player's Handbook. You really, there's like, I think an orc or two in the back of the Player's Handbook and an example. So you probably could make up your own monsters, but because he really, we should be pushing the whole line, but you don't need that CKG. There's nothing in that Castle Keeper's Guide that you need, especially the third printing. In the first and second printings of the CKG, we had the high level. So just to take a step back, the original CNC game was designed to end at 13th level. That's Mac and Davis said, because when you get into really high levels in RPGs, it gets progressively harder to make it challenging and interesting. You still can do it, definitely, but it just gets harder. So they decided to cap it. Of course, that didn't work because no one wants to stop. You made it to 13th level. Who wants to stop, right? That's crazy. So I eventually wrote the high-level abilities that the classes get when they get up to 24th level. And that went into the CKG. But we pulled that out of the second printing or the third printing and put that into the 8th printing, all the current editions. So even now, the previous editions of the CKG had some player content in it. Now it's just random content for players and CKs, but it's not needed at all. It's completely optional. It's a great book. I recommend it. I really do. It's got a ton of stuff in it that you can enhance your game with that have nothing to do with rules. I mean, we've got a whole section on world building, a whole section on city building, we've got damage equipment. My favorite section is treasure. Land is treasure. There's all kinds of great stuff in the CKG, but it's not necessary for the game. Not at all.
All right. I've been saving a question from, it was actually from someone from Fantasy, from Smiteworks. I'm going to hold off just a couple more. I will get to that question because I do want to know the answer. But we got another one over from YouTube. Obligatory question about whether Castle Zagig will ever come back.
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and I love the fact that I get that question. Yeah, and it's great. You know, I worked with Gary for 8 years. TLG did. Mm-hmm. And on a personal note, we had a meeting in January of 2008. That's when he passed away, right? 2007. I can't remember now. Mm-hmm. And he laid out all the stuff that he wanted published. I don't know if he knew he was sick because he died in March. 2 months after that meeting. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of stuff that I had promised that we would publish after he passed that we couldn't for obvious reasons. But anytime that IP comes up in discussions, I always make sure that any of the Gygaxes know that TLG is more than happy to pick up right where we left off and just keep on moving. So if the opportunity were to present itself, we would do it in a heartbeat. And that Castle Zagig setting, I know it's hard to get a hold of because it's, I think it's like $350 on eBay or $400, whatever.
It's quite pricey these days.
It's very pricey. And we even printed that one pretty deep. The Castle Zagig Upper Works that one was a shallow printing. We had to get that. The powers that be gave us a few extra months because we'd put so much work into that. So we did a very limited print run on that one. But Yigsburg, if you can get a hold of Yigsburg, and for those of you, I've got one here. For those of you who don't know, it's this silver hardback book, got a map in the back. It is one of the coolest city settings you're going to be able to play in. It is, and it's got like, I think maybe 15 square miles around the city of terrain to explore. Really good stuff. So if we could, yes, absolutely. Where that lands, it's all in limbo right now. I think there's a few lawsuits floating around and stuff's got to get resolved. So
that's sad. Hopefully someday.
Hopefully someday, because it is really good.
Especially if you could get some reprints of the ones that were already published too.
Yep.
So that people can actually get a hold of them.
Yeah, we don't Trollord Games. We do a little bit of collector stuff. When we do a Kickstarter, we offer a leather version of books, but I really don't like to do collector's items for the just gamers. We're not. I come from that. You just get the book and use it to death. So yeah. So I would be very excited about doing a second, third, fourth printing, whatever it called for.
All right. So this question I've been saving is just some game systems come out and only with a small collection of adventures to play. CNC has quite a large collection of adventures. What is the library like these days?
So I think we've cycled a few out recently, and there's probably 20 or so titles that were exclusive to Kickstarters that, of course, got cycled out. I would guess off the top of my head, it's close to 100 to 115 titles for CNC, I think, active titles at the moment. Because we own our own print shop, it's easier for us to keep things in print. There's a problem with that, of course, as Chuck is fond of quietly pointing out. A lot of the older products need some overhauling and updating, and we've got better equipment, better know-how. So a lot of them do. And we have begun. We've actually begun with the A series to overhaul the line. It's just a huge amount of work. But, so I would say about 100 to 120, something like that. Wow. It's a lot.
That is a lot of just and that's just the adventures. Right?
Well, now that would be the adventures and the course. Probably about 80 or 90 adventures. But even that, it gets kind of...
Yeah.
It's a lot. And even that, we do a weekly, like if you subscribe to our Patreon, you get a weekly 1-page adventure. It's just an encounter, and some of them are strung together, but every Thursday or Friday, I think it's Friday, we release to the Patreon backers an adventure. And I know there's over 30 of those alone that you could jump into, and it's just something for a quick, hour, 2 hour to jam into your session or whatever, just whatever kind of encounter Davis has created.
Yeah, and I know I've seen the Troll Lord Games link tree floating around in chat. Can we get that dropped in again?
Oh yeah, that's something else Chuck and I have been talking about. That needs overhaul too. So it's funny. I was having trouble with our shipping software the other day and had to go in and do some. I don't know what it was. It crashed. It just crashed in the middle of it. I had to go in and do something. And I got to thinking, these even this digital stuff, it's just like physical stuff. It needs constant repair, constant upkeep, constant overhauling. And you guys know that at Fantasy Grounds, you've got a huge software packet that needs fixed, as this changes on the whatever changes here, whatever there. Yeah, lots of old Jim Ward stuff. Yeah, we got a whole bunch of Jim Ward stuff. And actually we've got, I think, 4 Jim Ward titles we've not published yet. We've got a lot of stuff floating around. I think we're going to have 4 releases in the month of March. We got the NPC Almanac Register, the NPC Almanac Skirmishes, Book of Names, and something else. Bergman Outlandish coming out in March alone. Yep, there's the link tree.
There we go. I got it in there. It looks like we got it in there twice, but everyone should go and click on that, check it out. And it should have all the Troll Lord Games info that you need. Should link to their website, their Patreon, I'm assuming, all of that.
Evo, reach out to Babunsky. He's that's Chuck, and Babunsky's in charge of all of that stuff. The digital side of things. Well, that's not true. Tim handles the PDF drive-through. Chuck does VTT and Twitch. So they try to keep me out of it because I'm not terribly. I don't even know if I'm not technically savvy. I've got some kind of aura, I think, that makes electronics not work properly. So, there's something going on. Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I sometimes have that, and I'm young. I'm not supposed to have that, but sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's just, whatever.
All right. So, what new stuff does Troll Lord Games got in the pipeline that you can share with us?
We just got them today. I haven't actually updated the Kickstarter. We just got in today, this morning, and unloaded the NPC Almanac and the 2 NPC Almanac hardcovers, the Book of Names and Bergman Outlandish. We're gonna start shipping that Kickstarter hopefully next week and get that. But these are it's 500 pages of NPCs for your game, both class-based and non-class based. So it's a mountain of material that anybody can use. It's probably, if I was to be honest, it's 5th edition players or any edition players could scoop it up. It's for Castles and Crusades, but you just look at it and you can easily, it's easy to use, universally. So that'll be in the short term. And then we're doing an adventure spell book, which takes all the past 16 years of C&C spells that we've put out in all of these different, books into one large 350-page book. That one includes 160 new, well, it's right at 200 new rune spells for the rune mark. So that'll be out sometime in late March, sometime around in there. And then we're really kind of pushing into the planes. It's just going to be a lot of fun. We released last year Gods and Legends, which is a deity book, and that's kind of our launch point into the planes, because we now need to develop the planes where these deities exist and do the elemental planes and all of that stuff. And off of that will come a new printing of Amazing Adventures. That book's almost sold out, so we're going to do a new printing in that direction. And with Amazing Adventures comes its subgenre games, the horror game Tainted Lands, science fiction Star Siege. There's another one I'm missing that's in there. I can't remember what it is, but so there'll be a lot of genre games coming out of that as the year unfolds. And then Davis is working on a book of guilds and orders and expanding our weapons book. We got a 48-page weapons catalog, and now we're going to just blossom that out into a full hardcover book. And then I myself am working on the Plains book on one end, but this monstrous tower dungeon Aufstrag on the other, which is 21 level huge dungeon that I will begin. It's really a city more than anything that myself and Peter Bradley will be hammering out. So we've got a lot set out, a very ambitious a schedule for the next 18 months. And right in tune with that will be, and I think Chuck's got this well underway, is a continuous release of taking our older product and some of our newer product and releasing it on Fantasy Grounds on the Forge to keep building that side of the community.
Awesome. I don't know if you know or can share with us, but do you know, can you share like what, like how do I phrase this? The next like Fantasy Grounds release for you.
So
get some people excited for it.
I can, but it's still kind of, I get in the very gray area where Chuck is on these projects. And I know we got the C series laid out and ready to go. We've released C1 through C4, which are adventures. And C5, 6, and 7 are all queued up and ready to go. I think C5 will release on Monday. Now, in the midst of all of this, I believe he is very, very near or has already completed, and it's in testing, our second player's handbook, which is the Adventurer's Backpack, which brings it, I think it's 13 more classes to the game table. And these are really kind of interesting classes to the left and right. So they don't bother the core, but they just give you a lot of extra stuff to do at the table. So that's the direction that we're going in there. And the Castle Keeper's Guide, I'm not sure where we are, but I know that I put it in the schedule as a possible in the next 3 months. So the CKG may even actually be closer than we realize. So the Adventurer's Backpack and the CKG are the two most things I'm most interested in seeing getting out there. And I think it'll be really good for the community too. C4 drops Monday. C4, C5, I can't remember which one it is. It might be, yeah, no, he's right. It's C4. And then we will be doing the A series, which is our, hands down, our most popular adventure series by any stretch of the imagination. The A series will start rolling out sometime this summer. So we're really looking to do a new release every 2 weeks. That's the plan.
Okay. That's a pretty good schedule you guys got going.
It's ambitious. I'm not sure we can keep that going. But,
nice and full though.
Yes, and that's really what it's one of those things that, you know, I had mentioned earlier. I really regret not becoming more active in the Fantasy Grounds community years ago. I really should have. It's an opportunity I think I missed in just bringing more gamers together, playing the games that you know we have and all of that. But we're going to try to make up for that lost time in the next 18 months. Start rolling this stuff out.
That's awesome. I know that the Castle and Crusades fans that play through Fantasy Grounds are very excited for all of those.
Sweet. Yeah. And Fantasy Grounds has got this absolutely beautiful layout. When I look at it, you know, I haven't played it yet. I haven't gotten to use the tools yet, but it just looks beautiful. So I'm excited to see this stuff come out. I mean, it's really cool.
I think we're almost out of time. So if anybody has, say, a last minute question you want to quickly sneak into chat, now would be the best time. And if not, we'll let Steven get back to his life and his important duties at Troll Lord Games.
Got a pretty busy afternoon still laid out. My wife has left town for the day, so I'll be working late tonight. I'll take that opportunity to work late into the night. So, so there you go.
Shildbara says that I should host a game with you.
Oh, that would be cool.
I would love to. Although I don't know if I would want to host it because I don't know Castles and Crusades that much.
We may have to host it together. I know the game, but not Fantasy Grounds, and you know Fantasy Grounds, but not the game. So,
you know, I've heard of people doing 2 Game Master games.
There you go. That might work.
All right. Anyone else before we let him go?
What is the best way to try it? So Evo, right now, if you want to do it in Fantasy Grounds, the rule set is free, so you can just download it and have a gander at it. But if you want to just look at the rule set itself as it's published in print format, you can go to our site. I think if you go right to the store, you can download the 7th printing. Now the 8th printing, I do want to caution you, the 8th printing is much prettier and with a lot more art, just a much easier approach. But the 7th printing will definitely get you everything that you need. You can grab that PDF, and in the first, whatever, I think there's like 3 pages of the rules before we present the classes, and that's the game in a nutshell right there. So you can snatch that for free, and Chuck, it's free through the 31st of March, right? The rules set on Fantasy Ground. I'm pretty sure.
I just dropped a link to the Forge for anyone on Fantasy Grounds that really wants to check it out. It's the first little option right there. You can just go click that and add that to your Fantasy Grounds account.
Excellent.
And then you can pick up the Player's Handbook right after that.
There you go. And then you're golden. You got everything that you need. And then you know, whatever.
Gotta have your dragons.
That is true. You do need, especially in CNC, our dragons are pretty tough. So you probably want to bring those on board.
Yeah, at level 1, in fact.
Yeah.
You'll be fighting dragons at level 1.
Make it challenging.
Yep. Everyone agrees. Yep, dragons at level 1. That's your game mastering advice for today. Find some new players, start a level 1 campaign. First thing they find is an ancient red dragon.
There you go. It'll be a quick game at least.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone thinks Dungeons and Dragons sessions have to, or I should say role-playing game sessions have to take hours. Nope. Drop them a dragon. Ancient Great Worm, yep. Drop it at level 1, and, well, they might not play again.
Yeah, that might be the end of that.
That might be the end of that group, but...
Hey, I'll tell you this. I ran this game years ago with a bunch of kids, and I don't know why I gave one of them a Vorpal blade. But once he discovered they were first level, because we were just goofing, but once he discovered he could cut things heads off, he went crazy.
Oh, no.
He loved the game after
that. Wait, you mean I can just decapitate everyone?
Yeah, that was his response. He was attacking statues, trees, just anything he thought he could.
That's really funny. That's really good.
It was hilarious.
It
was funny, kid. Hey, he was having fun. That goes a long way, right? So
it does. That is the most important part about any game.
Really, it should be about the fun.
From what I've now learned about Castles and Crusades, it sounds like especially Castles and Crusades.
Yes, it's designed that way. It's really designed so that you can take this game and run with it, and it's yours. And develop your style however you want it to go.
Well, cool. I'm excited to check it out. I think everyone that's interested should go either pick up that PDF or the rule set on Fantasy Grounds, and then consider picking up the book. I know that I will probably go and pick up myself the 8th printing of the Player's Handbook. That cover art is fantastic, by the way.
Very happy with the covers. It's just beautiful.
It's very I love that it evokes the that was the original Player's Handbook, wasn't it?
Yeah. The first Player's
Handbook.
We did all 3 of them, and they were really, we just did it as kind of a tribute because I wanted to do a tip of the hat, to AD&D, where my roots are deep. But Jason just knocked it out of the park. Jason Walton did those covers and knocked it out of the park, and people have just gone crazy over them, and for good reason, because they're just beautiful. They're just beautiful. All
right, well, we'll let you go. I want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to come and speak to us and talk about nerdy games that we all love.
Exactly. Well, thanks for having me. This has been a blast.
All right. Well, so we've got, we should have the Fantasy Grounds mapping show tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We also have my actual play show, Fabled Dice, at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Does Trollord Games have any streams coming up soon?
Yes, I do a regular stream every Tuesday at 4:30 to 5:30 Central Standard Time, where it's just Ask Me Anything. So any questions you have about anything we've done or anything we're doing, or even just the industry or movies, we end up talking about all kinds of crazy stuff on that stream. And then I do a second stream on a Thursday, 4:30 to 5:30 Central Standard Time. It's GM's Tricks of the Trade, where we just talk about GMing and things to do for new GMs or older GMs or whatever it is, the veterans out there. And Chuck, I believe, has started a stream on Wednesday. I'm not sure of the time. It's in the evening. He's going to be running Castles and Crusades. And Tim's got another stream about the World of Ered and World Anvil on Thursday as well. So, yeah, check our schedule out. We've got all kinds of streams. And a quick shout-out. How's it going, Clever? How's it going, Celestian? I see he's got a first printing of the PHB, so that's so he goes way back. So.
Yeah. All right, and that's on the that'll be on the Troll Lord Games Twitch channel.
Troll Lord
right?
Games Twitch channel. Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Just you can get it in our link tree or on our website or whatever.
Yep. And I just put, for those that are watching on Twitch, I just like, oh, okay, it didn't quite go through. Never mind. Follow the link tree.
Yeah, just go with the link tree.
Just go to the link tree. It's easier. All right, and that's it. That's it for our show. We'll see you. We'll see you all later. Thank you again for coming and talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
And have a good rest of your day. And play some Castles and Crusades. I know that's what I'm gonna go do.
Excellent. Yes, let's all do it. I'll be doing that this weekend too. So there you go.
Bye.